Welcome to the great conversation where ideas matter. Ideas shape markets. Ideas can change the world. A lot of people don't realize that you can't separate drink from military ventures over the course of history. They're inextricably linked. And especially when in regards to the American patriot. Little known fact, but in the Revolutionary War, there actually, General George Washington actually started incenting his troops by an allotment of whiskey. And that became something that ended up persisting in the military for hundreds of years. And what we're going to do today is take 4 branches of military, and we're representatives from 4 branches of our military, and we're going to talk about their unique journey in their lives that led them to start a first-class bourbon company. So I want to welcome today 4 Branches Bourbon and 3 of their founders, Harold Underdown, R.J. Casey, and Michael Trott, who has been with us on the great conversation about a year ago, talking about his book, The Protected. Gentlemen, great having you on the great conversation.
Hey, thanks for having us on.
Good to be here, Ron. Let's take it from the beginning, okay? I'm at a security conference, and Mike is telling me he's actually going to start a bourbon company, which who does that? I want to understand from 3 of you guys, what started the idea of going to an audacious goal? I mean, starting a bourbon company. Tell me about that journey.
Ron, I appreciate it. And actually, the guy who came up with the original concept of this is Rick Franco, our Marine component. And he's not with us today. Not with us physically, anyway. Yeah, let me give you Rick's background, because it is important to understand how it started. And you're right, Ron, because it took some motivation, if you will. Rick was a VMI graduate and later became a Marine Corps officer. And while he was in VMI school, one of his classmates, Greg Wright, joined the Marine Corps with him. You know, a lot of guys may leave VMI and join different forces in different branches, but Greg joined the Marine Corps with Rick, and they were both officers. At a given point in time, Rick was recruited by the CIA to go work as a direct contractor for the CIA, doing overseas protection in high threat areas. And of course, we're talking after 9/11. You can imagine what that looked like. He reconnected with Greg and brought Greg over to the CIA as a contractor as well. And pretty excited to be working together again. And after a few months of training and one of actually Greg's first trip out to do what guys like that are trained to do, and that is to protect people in high threat areas, Greg did what he was supposed to do and protected his individual, his asset, but in the line of duty, he was killed. And so that was 20-something years ago. And as Rick will tell you, that was a genesis of the thought. And now let's move forward 20 years. Rick is in sort of whiskey bourbon country where he lives in Nashville. And he was driving home one day and he said, it just hit him like a lightning bolt. He goes, I want to do a barrel of bourbon. He goes, I don't know why, but it was bourbon specifically. I want to do a barrel of bourbon in remembrance of many guys that we lost. I mean, Rick had to repatriate Greg back to his mother and father personally and give them the story. And along with Harold and RJ's on the call with us, we've all brought individuals back under that flag draped coffin on an aircraft. And so it does hit home. So I think that had been, weighing pretty heavy on Rick's mind for quite some time. So he calls me up and says, hey, I'd like to do a barrel of bourbon for some guys we lost. What do you think? And I said, well, how are you going to do this? He goes, we'll make it. We'll put it in a bottle. We'll put it on Facebook and sell it. I'm like, well, you can't quite do it that way, Rick. It's going to be a little bit more involved. So we started talking about how you actually logistically do that. And even I didn't know, but I had been somewhat associated to another spirit brand that had been pretty successful, and watched them be successful and learned a little bit along the way. And then we reached out to Harold, and Harold is our Navy guy here, and served 30 plus years with the SEALs. And we gave Harold the background, and within just a few seconds, Harold goes, "Let's do this, I'm in." So just a couple of weeks later, the three of us kept talking and thought, well, we do have the Marine component, we have the Air Force component, we have the Navy component. We're missing, the Army guy here. So we reached out to a mutual friend, RJ Casey's on with us, and that's the Army component. And while we're proud to say we do represent veterans from all four branches, we do always want to recognize the Coast Guard and the new Space Force. But one of our criteria was we had to know each other either personally or through someone. And we just couldn't find that Coast Guard person that we all knew or had a relationship to. So God bless them. They're part of us in spirit, as well as the Space Force. But that's how the Four Branches Bourbon got started.
Well, you forgot one thing. I mean, one, you had a branch or two or three or four. But then you had to take the mash bill that has a standard 3 grains, and you had to add another grain to represent the four branches. Tell me that story.
I'll let Harold jump in here. He likes that story as well, because that was an important, memorable day for us.
Yeah,
we were at Bardstown doing our blending. I'll let Harold tell that story.
Harold, you're on.
Tell you. Yeah, what a process that was, because everything was lining up for us, right? Four branches of the military. Our bottle we picked is called a diamond bottle, high quality bottle and glass. It's got 4 sides to it. Our number on the bottle, the 4, means a lot more than just that number, and we can get into that later. But we went to Bardstown and we got an opportunity to sit down with their blenders, their master blender. Also, we had Steve Nally that came in, who's a master distiller, worked a long time. I don't know how many total years he had with Maker's Mark, but he's in the Bourbon Museum Hall of Fame. I mean, he's what a great opportunity. And we were at this table. It looked like a chemist class with all of these little glasses and vials, and then we started putting together our mash bill. We already had the 70-20-10 is usually normal, right? Just like you said, Ron, about 70% corn. Corn is where you get your sweetness, and then you have rye, and it was about 20 or so percent rye at that point as we were mixing through this to get to our final objective, which was 4 grains. And then we had malted barley, which is smells like an oatmeal, gives it really good aroma. And then, with Steve standing there with us, he said, let's go about 10% wheat. And not only was it just 10% wheat, we had aged wheat, which was about 6 to 7 year old wheated barrels that we blended with that other 70-20-10 barrels that we had. And after we went through that a couple of times, we started passing around, our little glasses, and we were smelling it. And we were getting highly educated on, what are you smelling? And then we introduced it, sipping it, keeping it on the front of the tongue, and then rolling it back. And then we got to that point where we're thinking, okay, this tastes really good. And then we had to mess with the alcohol content, which changes up the profile as well. So we went from an 80% to about 115. And we sat there and we mixed all of that up, right? So you can imagine we're sitting there and we're drinking these little thimbles. And it got to the point where we were almost ready. We almost had the final blend, and I think we did. And Mike and RJ can back me up on this. And, Dan, who was the master blender, kind of looked at me. He gave me a glass and he says, "No, hey, this is all for all of you guys." Well, I didn't get that. That didn't translate to me. I was just looking at that little glass that he gave me. And he said, "Now," I said, "just sip this and taste it." Well, what I didn't realize was that amount in that glass he gave me was for all 4 of us to share. Well, being the Navy guy that I am, you hand me a canteen cup, I'm not going to just take a little tiny, sip, right? So I knocked it back, and I didn't because I was kind of just, watched it because they were saying, hey, you wanna put it in your, on your tongue and let it kind of chew on it a little bit before you swallow it, right? So you don't shoot this stuff, right? You drink it, right? So we did that. But anyway, everybody gives me a hard time about that today still. But what we got out of that was a very complex 4 grain bourbon with our mash bill. And I tell you what, it is really refreshing to hear from your family members, your friends, our plank owners, everybody that has had an opportunity to do a tasting with us. They sip it back, and even with Steve being a total master distiller, he sipped his and he kept looking up into the sky, and I'm kind of like looking at him going, what's he looking at, and why can't he tell us what he's thinking? And then he finally brought his head down and he looked at us and he said, gentlemen, you got something very special here. So that's the story of our getting to our 4 grains. But it was very, very educational. But at the same time, I tell you, we really, and then when it all went into the big tank to get blended, and then we had to put it in a bottle, right? So we're all nervous. Oh boy, I hope this tastes as good as what we were sampling. And it really did. Maybe even a little bit better. So that's the story.
Just to underline something, first of all, thank you, Harold. To underline something for all the listeners here, this Steve Nally character, who is at Bardstown right now, but as you suggested, Harold, 31 years with Maker's Mark, and he started at the bottom rung. He worked his way through it, and he became Maker's Mark. He and his wife are Hall of Fame distillers. And it just blew me away. Fortunately for you, he ends up actually starting a distilling consultancy afterward in 2003. So he was interested in giving back to the industry. How did you connect with Steve?
Yeah, that was another sort of fortuitous. We Jeff Hotmayer is another name that we'll mention quite often, and Jeff is in the industry as one of the biggest bourbon brokers. And at the time, Jeff sat on a board of Bardstown Bourbon Company, and we reached out to Jeff about our adventure and journey, and who are the individuals you reach out to. If you take 4 guys that served in special operations in CIA, we're going to break it down. We're going to build that team and find out who are the specialists you go to get it done. At our time in life, starting a bourbon, entering into a very crowded bourbon market, you better bring something good. And so we rolled our sleeves up, and this wasn't, like Harold explained, it may sound like it was just a day. This was about a year and a half exploration. We went to several distilleries. We tasted other people's bourbon. I spent some time in Scotland, just trying to break it down, and really if you take 4 guys to land on something we all like. Some guys like high rye, some guys like a high corn. So to find that perfect balance took some time. But we landed with Bardstown Bourbon Company. And ironically, Mark Irwin is the CEO of Bardstown Bourbon Company. He's a former Delta Force commander. So you're kind of into the family, as they say. And Steve Nally is Bardstown's master distiller. So that's where he's landed currently. So yeah, it was just, sometimes the journey takes you in interesting paths you just can't see when you start where you're going to go. But I think if you put it out there to the world and you kind of listen and pivot when you need it, because we could have gone to a few other distilleries and worked with some other master distillers. But as Harold said, we're really blessed to have Steve walk into the room, and really the intention was to come in and say hi to us, shake our hand, and welcome to Bardstown. But about 2.5 hours later, he left. And that's just unusual for someone like him to do. So we're really blessed and fortunate, but that's how it came to be for us to be working with Steve.
Well, also, again, you think about it, how audacious is this? You're going to put 4 branches of the military. You're going to put the idea of an honorable soldier, an honorable life behind this brand. And for you to end up having the kind of DNA that goes into this whiskey, not only your own palates, your own passions, but a Hall of Fame Hall of Fame distiller. I mean, that was amazing, and it anchors the brand you originally intended. So, so you have served honorably in the process leading up to this whiskey, and now you just have to be disciplined enough to drink honorably, I guess, your trademark phrase.
That is the challenge for sure. You know, that's an important piece to us as well. And I'll let RJ kind of tell this story, but it is really, you hit on something, Ron, that's important to us. And we almost didn't do this. We almost didn't start this brand because sometimes of the veteran community that can overdrink and use alcohol and abuse it. And we had to think about this. But I'll let RJ, he's passionate about this as well. But our mission of changing the narrative of serve honorably, drink honorably is important to us. But RJ, you want to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say a lot happened in that first year and a half to lead us in that room with Steve Nally. And about the year mark, we all kind of looked at each other like, man, we've got an amazing team and this is obviously a great story. Is this the most responsible thing we can do? Like create another bourbon? And especially when we started talking about our communities, and Harold and I are both, have a medical background, but we're all special operations, and between the military intelligence and the first responder communities, there's a lot of self-medication, and obviously there's veteran suicides talked about a lot and addressed a lot. And so we had the phrase serve honorably, and it was kind of a double, we served honorably and now we're serving this honorably. And we kind of said, God, do we keep going with this bourbon company? And is adding one more alcohol, is that the best, thing we can do? And I think we let it sit for overnight, and we got back on the phone the next day. And I think we were all like, hey, what if we, and I think it was actually Rick again, who came up with, hey, what about drink honorably? We said serve honorably, drink honorably. What if we put them together? And, what if we go forward with that message? That's drink responsibly is kind of played out, and nobody even says it anymore. We all know what it means, but what about drink honorably? And we all immediately knew that we were going to go forward with that message. And then even after that, we were like, hey, when somebody asks, what does that mean to you as a company? We came forward with, let's not drink to forget, let's sip to remember. And that'll be part of that drink honorably. That'll anchor it to exactly what we mean. Just because you crack the bottle doesn't mean you swim as fast as you can to the bottom, like some people do, right? And especially as good as this tastes, and I've gotten a couple of comments, about, and I, as Harold alluded, a lot of us, whether it's a bourbon snob or a bourbon expert or just friends and family, is like, wow, this is really good. So we've been really excited about going forward with this brand and this messaging. It's a really big part of our company as well. And it seems kind of counterintuitive for a company like, hey, don't drink it too fast or drink it too much because we're trying to sell it, right? But I think the message is way more important.
Well, for me, what I thought of when I first saw those two phrases together, conjoined, if you will, is I was thinking of all the times in your journeys in service where, after the hot wash was over, after understanding what you did good and what you could do better, having a drink to say, we live for another day to serve even better the next time. And then for those who are fallen, a toast to them. So it's drink honorably, that is, in making sure you don't have too much, but it's also a celebration of life and the experiences you went through. And it just dawned on me that drink honorably was multifaceted in its meaning.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, Ron, one of the things that we thought was also important is, everyone's obviously going to, sip and toast to the fallen, but some of the other people that make all of that happen, a light gets shined on the guys that are on the X all the time, especially in the movies and when it comes to advertising and marketing. But one of the things we wanted to shine a light on also was, the girl right out of college, super smart. She kept the internet up and running during a sandstorm for 3 weeks while we were able to talk to our families because of her. Or the guys that kept the helicopters running, or the trucks, in working order. The guys that served us food, the people that helped us get to a forward operating base, from our house and home safely to our families. Like all of it, every person in that chain is important. So not just the guys on the X. So when we sip to remember, we really want to honor everybody that was part of that
I was
adventure.
watching a video of the Scottish military ceremony, and they had these amazing, what looked like almost a mini cauldron with two handles, and they had poured whiskey into the cauldron. And just imagine the two handles. All of you, I'm doing this through video so the guys can see me, but all of you listening in, just imagine holding a small cauldron with two handles, holding it up to another who has served with you. And by the way, you business people, this goes for business as well, to honor them in their service, and then drinking together from that cauldron. And it was very touching. And I was thinking of you guys. It just happened that I came across this. I wasn't even on you guys when I saw it, but it was very touching, very touching. Where do you go from here, gentlemen? You have done something audacious. You teamed up with a master distiller. I can see on your faces how proud you are because of the feedback you've gotten from friends and family and customers like me who ordered online. I was surprised. I didn't even know I could order bourbon online until I got the link from Mike. So what's next?
Well, what's next is getting it out to the market, right? You can only be as successful as the consumers get the chance to try it, and then like Harold was saying, you can sell bourbon once, but the strategy is to sell it twice. Whatever it is you're selling, right? So you have to like it the first time. So we're in that trial period, which is cool. We only launched about 3.5 months ago, which we're early in this adventure. But the other thing that we were fortunate to was to create and you will appreciate this, is to create an advisory group that's from the industry to keep us on track, keep us within the guardrails. And we've been blessed to assemble about 150 years worth of experience from executives from Brown-Forman, former executives from Brown-Forman. If you know Brown-Forman, they own Jack Daniels and Woodford Reserve, and one of the oldest, sort of brand companies out there. So these individuals, anywhere between 15 and 40 years of experience as an individual, is on our advisory team, and they're the one guiding us. And that has been, I don't think we would be where we are today without their guidance, for sure. And we have been fortunate to gain national contracts with two of the largest distributors in the nation, which gives us national distribution as we're ready. We launched in Tennessee first with Littman Brothers, and we're doing very well in Tennessee. This month, we launch in Kentucky, Florida, and Arizona. And that will kind of give us a little bit of a regional ability to test the market within those three regions. Florida is a great bourbon region and a very patriotic and patriot military town. So that gives us a chance to kind of our core customer, if you will. Arizona is where I currently live, so it gives me a chance to be in the market here. If you're going to have a bourbon, you better be in Kentucky. So that's a no-brainer there. And then we hope to tease the Maryland, DC, Virginia area later this year and early next year. And RJ's up there to take and run with that. So to your point, Ron, we're going to listen to our advisors. We're going to try not to get ahead of our skis, which is, as for military guys, probably the hardest part we have is we have friends in all states going, dude, get us in Michigan. I want to buy it in Idaho. I got guys and we got friends in England going, hey, when are you going to get it in England? When are you going to get it over here? We want to deliver it to all those places. But what that takes is a lot of capital and a lot of bourbon. So you have to be careful not to get ahead of yourself there. And as our advisors say, pick your 4 or 5 markets, go deep, not wide, and get solid in those markets and build your capital and build your following. Then you can kind of roll it out to the Californias or the Texases and the other big states. It's going to kill you if you're not prepared. So that's kind of where we are right now. It's fun. It's a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time, but we meet some great people. I think that's the other thing. When you come from the special operations or the intelligence or the security background, you're very siloed. You don't talk a lot to the broader audience about certain things. You kind of keep it confidential. If you have something that's working for you and your entity, whether it's executive protection or it's intelligence, you kind of keep it in a little bit of a smaller silo. What we have found with the spirits industry, especially the small craft of bourbon and whiskey, people want to talk. People want to share that sip and tell a story. And that story often reflects on how they got started or how they got in the industry, or you need to meet this guy, or you guys need to go over and visit with them. And that's been really kind of a cool secondary effect for us that's unusual, that we've enjoyed. So yeah, we're looking forward to this journey. We couldn't be happier to have the 4 guys that we have together as partners to go forth and, as RJ says, to deliver a message. We do kind of consider ourselves a little bit of a disruptor in the sense that our message is a little different, and we're okay with that. And as Harold says, if we sell less because of that, that's okay too. Our message is just as important as our taste. So
that quality of your background, quality of your integrity, Harold, I really appreciate that. That's exactly how I lived my life. And the quality of your product. It's all merging into one. One thing, I can't help myself, guys. As you know, I'm a strategist for a living. I can't help myself. But I was going, I ordered a bottle online in Washington State. They don't have a distributor here. It's not going to be in the stores here. And I'm going, you know what? This whole idea, you don't drink alone. Although last night on my dock, it was a beautiful sunset, and I had to have a whiskey as I was watching the sunset, all by myself.
You shared that picture with me, so I was there with you.
I got Mike all ready for this great conversation by having a picture of this little glass I have that says Truth Serum. Now I poured the whiskey just right, so all you could see was truth, and I sent it as a foreground to the sunset over the lake. And
beautiful.
I said, Mike, I'm ready for a great conversation. But I'm telling you, I think you're onto something here. I think people want to be part of a community, especially a community like you guys are. And there's something there that you can explore from a subscription standpoint that also makes them part of that community. And I think you're onto something there, and I hope to see it one day from you guys. I think it would be a fantastic thing. So when you're ready for the subscription program and the community following, send me a note, because I'll be one of your first subscribers.
Love it.
Yeah,
This has been a great conversation with Harold Underdown, former Navy SEAL, R.J. Casey, former Army, and Mike Trout of the U.S. Air Force, and a nod to our other partner out there, Rick Franco of the U.S. Marines. Gentlemen, this has been a great conversation. I
Hey,
appreciate
Ron,
it
thanks so much for having us. No, thank you. We're
Thank
honored.
you, Ron.
Absolutely.